Life after the Civil War was very hard, especially in the South. First-time author Renee Russell captures the trials and heartache of a McNairy County woman in her new book, Kate's Pride. I spoke with Renee in her West Tennessee home recently. Her story was inspired by a dead end in her own genealogy.
I got to a point on one of my family trees where there was nowhere to go. The great-great-grandmother had 2 illegitimate children and was disowned by her family. None of her children or grandchildren had any idea who her parents were, any siblings, anything that I could use to track backward through census records or deeds or any kind of public records that are available. And even though I tried everything I could think of, there was nothing. And I've been a reader since I was like 5 years old. And I always secretly wanted to write, but I never really told anybody that, except for my best friend in junior high. She knew that little secret thing going on there. But so my husband says, well, you know, why don't you write a story about what could have happened in that time, in that place, and under those circumstances to a young woman? And he said it won't be what really happened to her, but it could be what happened to her, and it will give you a little like closure.
So tell us about your lead character and your connection to her.
The lead character is based on one of my great-great-grandmothers. There are no existing pictures of her, although I do have pictures of one of her sons and his descendants through me. And she just appeared in the census records. I have no idea where she came from, who her family was, where we went with that. I know where she's buried, and I know the names of her children and her descendants, but that was pretty much all that I had to go on. So I thought, So I did research into the time. It was a very rural area. It was the end of the Civil War. Everybody in the South was pretty much in bad shape just from that. On the point of starvation. A lot of men never came home. Families were destroyed or divided or that kind of thing. I spoke to the head of the oral history department at the University of Memphis about the era because I wanted to have it as accurate as possible, even though it was going to be fiction. Then I worked with Gary O'Neill, who is part of the Historical Society in McNairy County, and to get more specific, to drill down specifically to McNairy County and things that had happened there and who they happened to.
So then would you consider your book historical fiction or just fiction?
I would consider it historical fiction. The place names are all real. Many of the events that happened are real. It's just the characters that are made up.
Do you think your book and your story is making a social statement?
I don't know that I would call it a social statement, but I think it does speak to relationships. There's a quote, and unfortunately I cannot remember who the quote is actually from, but it says, "What will people think? These words rule the world." And to an extent that is still true, but it was even more true back then because you absolutely did not have a child without being married. So it speaks to family relationship. How do the other members of your family react when this happens? How does the community react when they find out? What is your place now as opposed to what it was before this happened? And are all the truisms that you believed when you were growing up, are they real, or is it just something that you were told?
Well, the title of the book is Kate's Pride. Where did you get the title? What does the title mean?
It actually has a double meaning. Kate's Pride, she's a very proud woman. She feels like, yes, she made a mistake, but she shouldn't be made to pay in the way that she did. And so she's going to stand up for herself and for her children and say, I didn't do anything that wrong, and I'm not going to run away and be ashamed. And then pride also refers to a lion family. And so it's Kate and her children kind of against the world. So there was a double play on the choice of Kate's Pride as the choice of the book.
Researching and writing this book, what do you think you learned personally?
I think I learned a lot about the history of where I came from, who my people were, perhaps how they came to be where they are now. They're all from a very rural area. None of them had a lot of money. They were all cotton farmers. They were not slave owners. They had a lot of children, obviously, to be working the fields for them and to go on. And then I also found out that, of course, back then the mode of transportation was pretty much on foot. So you married whoever was in your, within a few miles of your home. So you have intermingling of specific families over the course of the year, or early years, and then of course as time goes on, cars come around, people move to other cities for jobs or for whatever reason, and then it gets a little more spread out.
What do you want or hope the reader of your story will learn?
I would like them to look at Kate and perhaps see a facet of themselves, not necessarily that they've had a child out of wedlock, but to see that women can be strong, even under very trying circumstances, that, they can raise their children, they can stand up for themselves, that bad things are going to happen, even to people who had good intentions. So I think the strength of the character of Kate, even though she did not have a happy life, is something that I would like people to see when they read this story.
So in addition to a personal story, is this a story of Tennessee, the South, or the rebuilding of a nation?
I think it's probably all of those things. We're at the end of a war that tore the entire country apart. McNairy County itself was a microcosm of the Civil War. It was almost 50% split with their sympathies to the Union and the Confederate causes. So you had a mini situation going on within the county that was going on a national level. So a lot of families were torn apart by their loyalties to either side. The county was torn apart by loyalties to either side. And then, you had the entire national situation going on.
Kate's Pride is available from Wings ePress and can be downloaded as an ebook. On Renee's author site, you'll find the backstory of the book and a continuing blog that represents Kate's journal.
Even though I wrote the story myself, and I was very concerned about what family members might think about where I took the story, none of them saw it before it was actually published. And I was concerned that they might not like the direction that I took with the story. But I tried to make it as real as possible in that time and in those circumstances. And Kate grew in my heart and became a person that I felt a lot of respect for. I had a lot of sympathy for her, and then I had a lot of pride in her too for what she did, how she handled her life, and how she went forward in some very trying circumstances.